Hello and welcome back to Coffee Chat Club. This is Green Careers Unlocked and I'm your host. Today's episode is Bagged. We're talking all about what it really means to work in environmental advocacy and engagement. I'm chatting with Miranda Baksh, Engagement Manager at Environmental Defense, who is going to share her career journey. Think the good, the bad, and the I can't believe that happened moments. We will dig into what her job actually looks like, how she worked with the Community Climate Council, and the real challenges and lessons she picked up along the way. If you're wondering how to break into this space, we have got you covered with practical career advice, key skills, and some solid networking tips. We will also unpack the big debates about sustainability jobs. Are they really making a difference? Plus, we will peek into the future, trends, opportunities, and how AI and social media are totally reshaping the game. And of course, we are wrapping things up with a green lightning round. Quick, fun, and maybe slightly chaotic questions to get to know Miranda better. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's jump right in. This is Coffee Chat Club, Green Career Series, and this is episode 4. So let's talk about your career journey and what led you to a career in environment.
I think my innate curiosity for nature and living things since I was a kid is really what drove me. So I've always been really curious about the amazing animals that we share this planet with and the abundance on this planet and how long things have existed before humans have arrived on Earth. And so all of those things have just been really encouraged by my parents to deep into even further. So I remember getting like National Geographic Kids magazine subscriptions or watching nature documentaries and just constantly asking questions about the natural world. And that really fueled me into this entire career path, which, to be honest with you, I never knew I would get into. I didn't realize you could make a career in the environmental realm when I was a kid. And they were also such great nature heroes growing up, like the Krat brothers, like Zaboomafoo, those types of shows. So yeah, definitely my love for the natural world.
Interesting. And I really like it how growing up, you were so close to the nature and this like motivated you to continue your path on the environmental science or in the field of environment. And can you talk briefly about your career path? Later in the show, we will be doing a deep dive about your career, about your role, about your responsibilities and skills, but like a quick snapshot to set stage for our audience.
Yeah, so I'm an engagement manager at Environmental Defense Canada, which is a national nonprofit that works on climate issues and other environmental issues. And I work specifically on the Reconnection Project, which is a project looking to connect communities to nature and the things that they care about. But I'm also co-founder and executive director at the Community Climate Council, which is a nonprofit that I started in 2019 based in Brampton, serving Peel region and beyond. And I recognized that there was a gap in our community where so many people cared about climate change issues, but there was nowhere for them to congregate to make real policy action or advocate on the ground. So that's how the Community Climate Council was born.
And before we deep dive into your roles and responsibilities, can you talk about environmental defenses? I know you mentioned climate change is one of their focus area, but can you give a little bit description about environmental defense? What are their focus areas and where they are located?
Environmental defense works on a lot of advocacy campaigns that are specific to Ontario and also national in Canada. So some of the Ontario issues are climate related, but also they're all about protecting our wetlands and our green spaces, such as the Greenbelt. There was a huge movement on Hands Off the Greenbelt, which I'm sure you've heard about. So there's a lot of local issues that we tackle there. And then on the national scale, there's a lot of movement away from oil and gas industries, things that are very polluting, moving towards renewable energy. So things like just transition is what they work on. As well as plastic pollution, thinking of a better way for us to reuse and recycle plastics.
And how does a typical day look like for an engagement manager? Like, say, a day in your life or a week in your life?
That's a great question. So it varies. There is about a team of 10 of us engagement managers, and each of us have our own files that we work on. So some work on toxics, some work on plastics, some work on an Alberta file. Mine specifically is working on communities in Ontario, and I work a lot with local regional coordinators who manage different teams on the ground. So for me, it's a lot of event planning, event coordination, education and outreach, research for new partnerships, and looking at new angles for us to engage audiences. And for my entire team, a huge focus is on subscriptions because really that's our main way of communicating with folks. So whenever you hear the term engagement, that typically means digital engagement. So through subscriptions, sharing petitions that our supporters can sign, or MPP phone numbers that they can call to really advocate for a cause. So they're focused a lot on engaging that group, as well as organizing events that really help push the needle forward on the ground.
And before we jump on the skills part of this podcast, I quickly wanna ask you about the organization that you co-founded, Community Climate Council. So can you tell me, like, if a person wants to volunteer or join the organization, how they can do it, and what sort of activities and programs you are doing?
Absolutely. The Community Climate Council is an incredible stepping stone for a lot of people who are transitioning in their careers and they want to get into the climate movement, or for budding activists who are recent grads or they're still in school, or they may even have a full-time job, but they want to do something because they're frustrated with the state of the world. So I have amazing stories with volunteers who joined and they didn't realize that they had this innate passion for protecting the environment until they volunteered with us. So I'm all about professional development. When people join my team, I actually unconventionally ask them, what skills do you want? What can we give you in your role? And if there are specific outcomes that they're looking to gain so that they can get into the career space, that is what I tailor their roles to. So some of those roles look like culture and engagement, where it's engaging our current volunteer base. Right now we have about 30 volunteers, or organizing events with community outreach on the ground with our team. We actually adopted a park in Brampton. It's Fred Klein Park, so we hold a lot of events there. And we also have a team on political advocacy that encourages civic engagement from young people, teaches them how to delegate and speak to their MPs. And then communications, of course, if you're interested in content creation, TikTok we just started. So there's a lot of fun opportunities to get engaged.
Oh my God, you are doing so many things, and especially with your 9 to 5, you are actually a co-founder. So hats off to you. And how big is your community in terms of numbers? Like, how many people are actually actively working with you? And are you located only to Ontario? Say somebody from Alberta wants to join you, or from Montreal join you.
That's a great question. So the Community Climate Council, originally we formed because there was a need in Peel region specifically. We found that if people wanted to get engaged in Toronto or larger cities, there was an oversaturation of different types of groups that they can get involved in. But when you looked at Brampton, Caledon, and Mississauga, there really was not a lot going on. So our focus is actually all about the local. We're all about Peel region and the GTA and beyond. So we've had partnerships from folks in Toronto all the way to Peterborough, and it's been a really incredible way to get engaged, but we have been quite Ontario focused. However, we do annual climate justice rallies, and of course that's a global march that connects youth from all around the world. So we've been doing a lot of advocacy on that as well. Most of the work, I would say, though, that we get recognized for is for like Highway 413, the Green Belt. We actually hosted a Green Belt rally in Ontario 2 years ago, and it was on CP24, so it was really exciting. So I would say that our strength lies in the local, and even though I can scale it up, I really think that there's so much power in engaging the underserved and marginalized, racialized community that is Peel region.
And if anybody wants to join, so do you have like an official website or a page where people can just go and reach out and connect with you and your team?
Yes, communityclimatecouncil.org is the best place, or our Instagram is Peel Climate. You can DM us there as well.
Awesome. Okay, let's jump to next section of our talk, which is career advice and skills for early career professionals as well as mid-career professionals. So, in the field of environmental advocacy, what skills or certifications you think are really, really important to break into this field?
I really admire when my volunteers take initiative. It shows me that they have drive, they have interest, and they're ready to take charge. I know it's difficult sometimes, I find, for students when often we were used to several years in school of waiting for instructions. But when you are ready to step into your career, my encouragement for students is to think the other way around. Think about what your manager needs, what does your team need, and take the initiative to go 3 steps ahead. And that is something that your team is really going to admire, and it'll take you to the next level. That's one thing that I really look for. The second thing I would say is program management. Just seeing that you're able to organize and manage a program or a project, you have a timeline, and you create deadlines for yourself. It's essential to do that to keep you and your team on track.
And what advice do you have for young professional looking to make an impact in this evolving field? And I want you to answer this question from two different perspectives. So first one is like for early career professionals, like teenagers or young students. And then the other perspective is for like mid-career professionals. Say somebody is 2 decades or 1 decade already into the job world and they want to switch to the environmental advocacy side of things.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, what was the question? Advice for them to get in?
Yeah.
So I'll start with the youth. For advice on getting in, I love the power of volunteering. Truly, I think it's an underrated thing. I know it's very difficult, and it truly is a privilege, especially in this economy, to find time to volunteer. It isn't easy to put your time out there for free. However, the things that you gain are truly priceless. So especially for students, I find that they gain soft skills. So that can be things like how to contribute in a group setting, how to negotiate, how to push your ideas forward. Those types of communication skills are often overlooked when you're in school, I find, depending on what your program is, especially if a lot of it's very theoretical. And then if you're later on in your career, I would recommend volunteering as a great way as well. However, you can also just look into your network. I think don't underestimate the value of the network that you've already built. If you've built it for 2 decades, chances are you may have some people in your network who are already connected. They can give you advice. And you have skills that a lot of nonprofits, just like the Community Climate Council, are looking for. And you can join as a board member. So if you go to goodwork.ca and you look up volunteer opportunities, many of them may be board positions. So if you're very senior in finance or policy, chances are there's a local youth-led nonprofit that needs your help and support, and you'll gain board experience out of it. So it's a win-win.
Interesting. I didn't know about this. And talking about the networks, and you provided amazing resources, by the way. So can you talk about other resources and network which can help people? I know you mentioned start with our own network, your Community Climate Council, goodwork.ca, anything else?
I think there's one called Work Cabin that you can also check out. In Peel Region specifically, volunteer MBC. MBC stands for Mississauga, Brampton, Caledon. They're also a really great organization to see what local areas you can volunteer at. Charity Village is another one if you're looking to get into the nonprofit sector specifically.
And now I have a very interesting and controversial question for you.
Okay.
So, so there's a growing trend of companies labeling roles as sustainability jobs, even when the actual work might not be driving the real impact. Some people argue that every job can be a sustainability job, but some people believe that this is a potential greenwashing tactic for companies. So I'm wondering, what's your take on, like, can every job truly be a sustainability job? Or is there a risk of diluting the meaning of sustainability in the workplace?
Totally. I love this topic. Really good question. The term every job can be a climate job. At first, when I heard it a couple years ago, I loved it because truly I think that everyone needs to recognize that they have a part to play in pushing the needle forward in making sure that we live in a climate safe future. We're now at a stage where we can't stop climate change. We're living in climate change, but we need to now choose what level are we comfortable living in, because every 0.1 of a degree of change that happens is a different climate future. So we can select what kind of climate future we want. Do we want one with bleached coral reefs? Do we want one with forests and clean air? Depending on the level and degree of severity that we choose, that's how safe of a world we can continue to live in. So that's the way I like to look at it. And when we think about that, that means we need all hands on deck. We are on the ship right now, and we need to make sure that we are advocating for the planet that we're living on. So every single field is valuable. A lot of people think, well, they're not in the environmental field, or some comments I get that really annoy me is, oh yeah, your field is so important, you're going to save the world. No, I cannot save the world on my own, and neither can my colleagues or even everyone in the environmental career space. It's not up to us, and I don't think society should see it as, oh yeah, it's something that experts are just going to solve for everybody else. That just isn't the case. We really need everybody to realize they all have their own expertise. We need people with every lived experience to come together and develop solutions. So with that said, I like the term that every job is a climate job, because whether you're in sales or finance, there is definitely some way that you can influence your company to do better. However, I'm noticing now when I'm looking at LinkedIn or other job search pages, there are a lot of industries that are inherently polluting, whether they're extractive mining, whether it's oil and gas, and they throw in the word environment somewhere, or green, or sustainable. And how far can ESGs go if the goal of the company is to worsen climate change? So it is a bit of a controversial topic, I think. However, it should be quite simple. I just don't think that there are some jobs that you can push the needle very forward if the goal is ultimately to extract from our planet. So I would just let students be wary about that. There are specific terms you can look at. Environmental Defense has some great blogs on this topic. If you look at false solutions, these are solutions that are presented as solutions in the climate crisis, but they are actually just ways for oil and gas to keep on functioning, or other extractive industries to continue the work that they're doing. Some include like blue hydrogen, CCUS. So if any of those then are labeled as sustainable, some youth might be very well intended, and then they fall for the trap, and then they end up in a role that kind of pushes the needle forward in a way that they didn't even intend or were aware of.
I do have a follow-up question around this, but I'll wait for my question, because I'll ask that question in the trends and outlook portion of our conversation.
Okay.
So my next question is, what's one thing you wish you had known before starting your career in environmental advocacy?
I wish I knew that if you think whatever section or sector I thought there was, it expands into 20 more different sectors. It's so much more vast than I could have imagined. I didn't realize. I think I thought about it so linearly. Like I really was torn between going into science, like environmental science, or social science, where I can talk about policy. And even when you think about policy, I thought policy was linear. Or planning. I'll give planning as an example. I always thought when I was an undergrad that planning meant urban planning, and it's just about planning cities, which I felt at the time I wasn't passionate about. I wanted to work at parks. I was all about conservation. But when I worked at parks, I realized there's an entire parks planning department, and you can be a planner for parks, planning how to plan trails in ways that are accessible for people. So I wish I knew that. That would have been really exciting. But all that to say that it's just such a vast space that I didn't realize. And I think that we should really stop thinking of the traditional environment. When we think of environmental studies, we automatically think nature, and it goes so much more beyond that. Environment can mean our human health, our body's environment. It can mean the built environment with buildings and infrastructure. It can just mean so much more. It truly is so vast. And that is where I really see the environmental sphere going into the other career paths, as I mentioned. So yeah, I wish I knew how vast it was. It's really exciting.
I love that. And I really like the way you put, like, we don't need to see environment or sustainability in a linear way. Like our skills, our work, and all these fields are so interconnected that we don't even realize until like we actually start working on these different fields.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about challenges and future trends. So, what are some of the biggest challenge you face in your work?
I think a big challenge, let me think. There are internal challenges, I think, being a young BIPOC woman, but then there's also external challenges when I just think about how polarizing the climate crisis has become, and it's very challenging. So I don't know which one to start with, but then there's like a third challenge, I think, being seen as a youth or a young person, and you want to be like taken seriously. I think that's something that a lot of women have struggled with for a while, whether it means in your professional life getting a promotion that you deserve or whatever else it may be. You may have to work extra hard to get to where you need to go disproportionately, and I still just don't think it's very fair. However, if I think about myself being an activist or an advocate at the Community Climate Council, like you said, it's challenging. I have a 9 to 5, and then after work, I run a nonprofit organization. So with a lot of young people who are in this space, burnout is real. And it's so important to recognize the signs of burnout ahead of time and know when to take breaks. And I take an unconventional approach in my organization where people need breaks, take a break. If we need to scale down, we'll slow down. I like to work with the seasons. So whenever it's like the end of year, holiday time, people are going on vacation, we see it's snowing, nature's slowing down, we also start to slow down. Right now, spring is on its way, things are ramping back up, so our energy is coming back up, we're getting busy, we're doing a lot of meetings, we're planning for summer and things ahead. So I like to work more on a yearly calendar in terms of energy. However, in work, it's typically a 9 to 5. So I would encourage people to think about how to bring balance into your life, even if it's like an unconventional way. Now, going back to climate change and the challenges of polarization, and with that comes a lot of disinformation, misinformation, and I'm hearing that even personally, people that I know, friends, family, are getting very confused with a lot of things, and a lot of facts are getting mixed up. So it's unfortunate to hear that something that I thought was simple when I was in high school, hey, we all need to come together to save the planet. Really, we're saving ourselves, and we want to make sure that we all have an equitable life while we're on this planet. It's a simple thing that I thought everyone would agree on, and we just simply don't. And I'm finding the polarization with people believing if climate change is real or not. It's very frustrating. That could be very challenging when you know that 99% of scientists agree unanimously that climate change is caused by humans, and politicians are able to say other things, and sometimes they win in elections, and you realize that they're pulling out of like the IPCC, they're pulling out of a lot of good climate action, removing protections from national parks, doing a lot of things that we truly just cannot afford to do at this state. Again, I'm going to reiterate that we have different levels of the future that we can choose to build, and we're really at the breaking point where we can't make decisions like that anymore. So it is frustrating for me to recognize that we're still having conversations about climate denial, or there's a lot of misinformation intentionally being poured out from polluting industries to cause delays on real climate action.
And looking at current trend, where we have so much misinformation and polarization of everything, I feel like. So, are you hopeful or not for the future of environment, of the future of the work that we are doing?
Such a good question. I think as an activist and or an advocate, and I'm sure I speak for all of them, it changes every day. I think that sometimes in our work, we can feel so inspired about the differences and changes we're making. And then other days, things can happen, whether it's political or in our work, that might make you wonder, are we going to be able to do this? So It definitely fluctuates, but I think that I'm absolutely more of an optimist and not an optimist that's like blinded by, yay, everything's going to be perfect and okay. I think I actually recognize that a lot is not going to be okay, but I still choose to be an optimist because truly, if we have one choice, we have to choose the path forward to protect the incredible lives that we have on this earth.
And earlier, you mentioned about the burnout and the balance. That's really important, especially in the type of work you are doing, because it requires a lot of energy and not only physical energy, but mental energy also. So recently I came across this term called eco-anxiety, which is increasing among people, and people are realizing like they are really, really anxious about future of their children, their future of this earth.
Yeah, at the Community Climate Council, we actually, in 2020, hosted climate cafes. And climate cafes are a space for people to congregate and talk about activism and mental health. And we talk about eco-anxiety, also ecological grief, which is when you grieve the loss of land. And I know I first felt ecological grief in 2010, I think I was in the 10th grade. There was a big BP oil spill. And I remember watching on TV this huge gallons of oil being poured into the Gulf of Mexico. And I just stood there staring at the TV, helpless. I started to tear up thinking about all of the animals that are impacted, and no one could do anything about it. And we just had to sit and watch. So that's a form of ecological grief when you're grieving the loss of land or creatures. We could also think about the forest fires during the pandemic in Australia. I remember how everyone felt. It was a very eerie, strange time. And then the fires came closer in Canada from BC to Ontario. And those wildfires are things that we can visually see in the air. Our sun started to turn really bright red because of all the particulate matter in the atmosphere, and you could smell it. So all of those things are definitely going to impact us on a mental level. So I'm really grateful for places like climate cafes where we can come together and talk to one another and journal, do different types of exercises. I really think community is so key in times like this, and that's really what keeps me going. The Community Climate Council is going to turn 5 years old this year. So exciting and wild, hard to believe. But what has kept me going for the 5 years is the community we've been able to foster. So many of my friends who are incredible people were made through the climate movement. I would not have met them had we not have met through our climate work. So community is everything right now, I think.
This is so exciting. Congrats for 5 years. Oh my God. I hope
Thank you.
I hope you celebrate 50 years of your community climate council, and we were having a chat
Oh,
in the
thank you
next
so much.
50 years. Yeah, and like how much progress you have made and the positive impact that you have created, and not only in like Peel, Mississauga and the Brampton region, but also outside of those there, but Quebec.
Oh, thank you.
So um and talking about the future, because we are talking about environment and sustainability because we care about our future, right? So talking about future, what trends do you see emerging in the field of environmental advocacy over the next few years?
That's really interesting. Let me think. When I think of trends, I automatically think of digital trends, but I'm trying to think of social trends, and I'm just seeing more and more that we need to stop working in silos. I think that we're seeing more and more that a lot of the things that we advocate for are interconnected with other movements. And so it's so important for different movements to come together and advocate for one another. So whether that's LGBTQ rights, whether that's women's rights, it's all connected into the climate movement. And so I think as a climate activist or anyone who cares about the planet, I encourage you to actually look at other groups that are advocating for things to move forward with, because as the United Nations SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, it shows us several goals that we can achieve. And someone told me one day that climate change is the most urgent issue, but it's not the most important issue. And that blew my mind because importance varies across countries. Like, of course, if there's a country that is suffering through poverty, that is their top priority more than climate change. However, climate change is urgent because it's timely, but we cannot address the climate crisis if we don't address gender inequity, poverty, access to water, and all of those other issues. So I think that moving forward, having more solidarity movements in advocacy is definitely the way that we're going to go, because I think it'll be harder for us to see the distinctions between them. We're recognizing more and more how interconnected these things are.
And you briefly touched on the digital side of this. So I'm really curious to know how you think technology will be shaping this environmental advocacy field. And when I say technology, AI is definitely on top, but also social media, because I feel like in the past 5 years, social media has really, really influenced the way we think, the way we present ourselves.
Absolutely. And we can also think about who owns our data, who owns things on social media.
Yeah.
And there's been a huge movement where people in the climate space are moving away from X, which used to be Twitter. The Community Climate Council included. We actually stopped posting a couple months ago. And a lot of people are moving to Blue Sky accounts. And that's where you're able to see information that doesn't have a lot of far-right rhetoric bias embedded into it. And that's been a very helpful tool. So my hypothesis is there might be a lot more shifting of where people go. And yes, AI does come to mind in a good way and a scary way as well. So the good way is that I think that we can communicate things effectively. It's been an incredibly helpful tool in order to organize. If we need to create an itinerary for something, let's say, to organize a climate rally, I'm sure that could be helpful. However, when we think about information and disinformation, there has already been several images I'm seeing on my feed. One was really recent. It was about a wasp attacking a polar bear, and it was like these huge wasps. And so many people thought it was real. I think it was George Lopez, the actor.
Oh my
He posted
God.
it. And everyone was like, oh my goodness, there's giant wasps in the Arctic and they're going after polar bears. And it was all AI. So I'm just noticing more and more. I'm seeing a lot of these types of images and videos where people are just simply falling for it. And that could definitely lead to concern if people are reporting on like wars or real life issues happening around the world. And it can look very realistic. So I think people just need to be very cautious, and we'll see where things head in that direction. I'm not sure what to say on it other than we have to see.
Time will tell, like a coin. Technology has both good and bad sides, so only time can tell us. Okay, so it's time to wrap up our show. And usually in this podcast, we wrap up in a very fun way. So our fun wrap-up round is called the Green Lightning Round, where I will be asking you a couple of questions, and you will get only 15 seconds to think and answer. Okay? Are you ready?
Yes, this sounds fun.
Okay, so if environment had a mascot, what would it be?
The Lorax.
Interesting. What's the most underrated green habit people should adopt?
I think just reusing old clothing and rags.
Oh, I love that because I thought the same.
That should be a norm.
Yeah. Okay. If you could have lunch with any environmental changemaker, living or historical, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. Jane Goodall and Margaret Atwood came to mind first. So.
Oh, I love
David
her.
Attenborough.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, there are many. Difficult to decide. If you could ban one unsustainable habit forever, what would it be?
Extracting oil and gas.
Ooh. What's your guilty pleasure that's not so eco-friendly?
Oh my goodness. It's horrible. Where to begin? I think going to drive-thrus. I just always think about the carbon emissions when we're all stalled there waiting for our food in our disposable containers. So getting something from a
For me,
drive-thru.
it's my takeout food. So sometimes I have to do it, but then I realize how bad it is.
Yeah.
Okay, and any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
I say, think of the world that you want, and the only way it can happen is if we all make it happen together. Don't look at the state of the world as it is and accept it, because we have no other option. The best way to make things happen that are in your mind is to go out, do it, find a community, talk to people, volunteer, and we can absolutely make it happen. It's in your mind for a reason. I truly believe that.
And that's a wrap on today's chat. Huge thanks to Miranda for keeping it real and sharing so many nuggets of wisdom about environmental advocacy and career growth. If you got something out of this episode, why not share it with a friend? Leave us a rating or hit that follow button so you don't miss what's next. And speaking of what's next, get ready. In our upcoming episode, we are talking to a waste management professional about what really happens behind the scenes in keeping our communities clean and sustainable. Expect real talk about career paths, daily challenges, and some surprising insights you won't want to miss. Until then, stay curious, stay caffeinated, and keep chasing that purpose.